Like, if I opened a bottle of wine today, it would taste different than if I'd opened it on any other day. Because a bottle of wine is actually alive. And it's constantly evolving and gaining complexity. That is until it peaks. Like you're 61. And then it begins its steady, inevitable decline. And it tastes so fucking good.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our exploration of Sideways. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California. Excited to be leading us through this movie for a second part. I don't know if we're going to go into a third part. A lot of things happen from where we left off in the first part, Steve, going into this second part, but we will see, because this is a dialogue-heavy film. This is also deceptively an action-heavy film if you're focusing on the interactions between these characters. And it's been so much fun to revisit this film for this podcast, because I've kind of come to the conclusion that this is a bit of a mini masterpiece by Alexander Payne that people don't talk about enough, about how great this film really is. You know,
I couldn't agree more. And I think this is such an example of like what independent film can do.
Yeah.
You know, which is that there's, you know, if you say, okay, we're going to follow these two guys as they go wine tasting, you know, in the Santa Barbara area, and the basic, and one is this and one is this. And I can totally see the executive in the meeting that you're having just starting to go to sleep and looking at his watch and going, well, obviously we're not going to do this. But by doing it, and by just sitting with these characters who are flawed and complicated and difficult and interesting and super, super human, I think there is so much insight into life. Yeah. There's so much drama. It's so moving. It's really damn funny. And you can only get there in an independent film. You can't get there. This can't be made by corporation. This can't be made by committee. This has to be made by artists working together to try to make a thing.
Especially an artist like Alexander Payne, who's very clear about what he wants to do.
Yeah. And by the way, John and I are also independent artists who are struggling to continue to make our great work of art, which is the Cine-Files. And if you want to help support this artistic endeavor, the best way to do it is either through a subscription on Apple Podcast or patreon.com/the Cine-Files, where you can listen to our art without ads. You can also hear our shorts where we discuss all sorts of topics, including art. And you can do that at patreon.com/the Cine-Files, and as I said, at Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, and you can also support us by going to the great people who support our show in those ad breaks and using our codes to use when you try out their products and support us in that way. That's always a great way to get people to come back and support our channel and support our podcast, because you're using their products. So it's another way where you can actually get something out of it while also supporting the Cine-Files here, which we would appreciate. All right, Steve, are we ready to dive in to the second part of Sideways?
Absolutely. I've just poured a nice glass of Merlot. I don't think that Miles will have any problem with that. What do you think?
No, not at all. Just let it sit for a little bit, then stick your nose all the way in it. That's what you're going to do with that.
I'm going to do it. I'm definitely going to do it.
All right, let's jump into it, Steve, where we left off at the end of part one, where it was with Miles and Jack there in the vineyard, and Miles touching those Pinot grapes as kind of a symbolism of him, which we'll hear about later, and his conversations with Maya as they develop throughout, and how he sees himself, right? So we fade in from black to both of them lying in their beds in the windmill, watching golf on the TV, which has been the prevalent thing we've heard that combines with wine here, because we all the way back in the first few scenes we saw that. Jack is going for a swim to, quote, get the blood flowing, and asks Miles to join him. We see that Miles has an empty wine bottle and 2 pill bottles next to him on the bedside. He turns Jack down, and as Jack leaves, Miles watches a golfer on TV miss a putt with the ball spinning on the rim of the cup, not going down the hole. Steve, symbolism. What
a little bit. I think the feeling of not completing your desired task, not achieving your goal, being oh so very close, John, and yet spinning out of control. I have felt that in my own life, in addition to seeing it in Miles.
Ditto. Ditto. But of course, I mean, it's so funny that also Jack is the one who wants to jump up and get going. Jack is a physical guy. He's not an intelligent guy. He's not going to caught in his thoughts. It is Miles who's the one who's going to be much more focused on what he's thinking, what he's feeling. Jack needs to do physical things in order to kind of get himself into a better place. So it gives us a good window into who they are as people yet again. But we cut to black and come back out of it again with Jack spraying some sort of antiperspirant or something on his white gym socks. Steve, you've done this before with your gym socks when you were younger. I feel like we've all done this, haven't we?
I didn't spray antiperspirant on my gym socks. No, I never did that. I did have, I mean, there were sprays and things to cover up my scents, but not in quite the way that Jack is doing it in this moment. But I do think that this movie likes to pay attention to the human minutia, whether it's cutting your toenails or using the toilet or just like all the weird little human bodily things that we don't usually see in movies. This movie wants to show us.
Yeah. Or your dingle dangle slamming up against the windshield of someone's car. All of it is there.
Yeah.
This fucking chick in the jacuzzi. Oh, dude. This place is wide open. I'm going fucking nuts up here, man.
Once again, Steve, he cannot contain himself or control himself. He is very much woman focused here, while Miles is not.
Yep.
Miles asks what he should wear. Jack says something casual and nice. Says that he's a writer, and then questions his shoe choice.
I have to interrupt you. He doesn't say that he's a writer. He says they think you're a writer.
They think you're a writer.
I think this is a critical line about Jack and Miles.
Yes.
Because by saying, you know how a word pops out accidentally that reveals something more about what you actually think? Jack saying they think you're a writer is actually what Jack thinks.
Yeah. And then Jack, after saying it's okay, wear whatever, questions his shoe choices, which is another element of Jack as well.
Hey, honey. Yeah, I was just calling to check in. Now, Miles and I are getting ready to go to dinner, probably stay out late, so I just thought I'd call and say goodnight now. Yeah. I miss you too.
And Miles looks over his shoulder at Jack with a mild look of what I think is disgust and shock at Jack's unflinching immorality here. What do you think is on Miles's face here, Steve, as we go in close up on him?
I think two things. The first thing I think is that we've in the many years of the Cine-Files, we have given a great deal of advice on the subject of good lying.
Oh, yes.
And when people are doing bad lying. The preemptive call to the fiance before you go out to have an affair and have a date with another woman is good lying. I'm not saying it's good.
He's not saying it's good to lie about this.
I'm not saying it's a good thing to do. I'm not saying it's moral. I'm saying in terms of the quality of setting up an alibi, the pre-loving check-in with the fiance is a good one.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree that Miles is increasingly not comfortable with what's going on here.
And it's fascinating, too, because, Steve, when you rewatch the movie after what gets revealed about what Miles does, these scenes take on a whole nother level when you're watching Miles's reaction, which is fascinating. But now we cut to them getting out of the car, heading to dinner with Maya and Stephanie. Jack looks like he's going bowling over the way he's dressed, and Miles looks like he's on his way to deliver a lecture. So once again, showing us very clearly by the costume choices the difference between these two men. Jack is much more free-flowing. Miles is much more buttoned up. We see that they're in Los Olivos, California. You ever been there, Steve?
Sure. Yeah. I've been all up and down the coast, and I love this area. I mean, I love it a lot. I was just there. I was just driving up through it a few months ago around my birthday. I love this whole area. Yeah,
I'm a big fan too. I remember going to a garlic festival in Los Olivos, which was an interesting experience on so many levels for someone who doesn't like garlic. Yet it did help my stomach. So there you go.
I just can't. You don't like garlic?
I like it mixed in with stuff. I don't like it to eat it pure, but you were eating it out of brown paper bags.
Yeah, going to a garlic festival. Yeah. It's not messing around.
It's not messing around for sure.
Just try to be your normal, humorous self, okay? The guy you were before the tailspin. Do you remember that guy? People love that guy. And don't forget, your novel is coming out in the fall.
Oh, really? How exciting. What's it called?
Could Jack answer that question?
No.
Agreed.
Not at all. That's a good question. Steve, did he even read a page of that novel?
Yes. I 100% think he read a page of the 750-page novel. And I think, but actually, I don't know that he read a whole page. I think he read in total a page.
Right.
Like he read the opening paragraph, and then he flipped forward a few pages, and he looked at something else, and then maybe he looked at the end and a few other things, and that was about all he read. That's what I think.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right there.
Do not sabotage me. If you want to be a fucking lightweight, then that's your call, but do not sabotage me.
Oh, aye, Captain, you got it.
And if they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
Oh, no, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any fucking Merlot!
This genuinely hurt Merlot sales.
Yes.
For many, many years after it. And it is, but my understanding, because there was a whole Decoder Ring podcast on the very phenomena of how this movie affected Merlot and Pinot sales.
Yeah.
And it has been, it sounds like a bit exaggerated, but it did definitely affect sales of both of these wines.
Yeah. Payne said, here's his quote. It said about this scene. Because, by the way, in doing research for this movie, I had no idea this line was so resonant with so many people. I just thought it was funny and moved past it. I'm going to drink whatever I want to drink. But apparently, as Steve said, and I'll get into that in a second, there were issues with how it affected the Merlot sales. But Payne said that this scene had been in the book. The choice for Merlot was simple. Back then, it was the overproduced, overmarketed, overconsumed, flabby wine. When asked to order it at a restaurant, people with little idea about red wines would stammer Merlot. But I never, ever could have imagined that one little joke in the movie, one line, would enter popular culture. I guess it hit a chord. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the movie. This was an interview last year. And at any celebratory events, I'm going to insist that we serve only Merlot. And that has been the case with these events. I did some research on it. Well, what Steve hints on is absolutely right. In a 2009 case study, Stephen Cuellar, an economics professor at Sonoma State University, found that a measurable decline in Merlot sales of about 2% occurred from January 2005. Remember, the film came out in October of 2004 through 2008. During that same period, though, Pinot Noir sales increased by 16%. It is now the second most planted varietal in California's Sonoma country. Wine analyst Gabriel Fromovich of Vineyard Financial Associates takes some issue, though, as Steve mentioned, with blaming Merlot's sales on Sideways, because he had said by the time the film came out, Merlot prices were already falling, a result of groves planting too many Merlot grapes after the wine became the go-to choice for many drinkers in the 90s. He did his own analysis as recently as 2017, and based on a USDA report, he reports that they found that any damage done by Miles' version of Merlot in the film appeared to have finally run its course, resulting in increased plantings and grape prices. And, of course, Pinot Noir became the focus, and that now has become the Merlot situation. Overplanted, overheated, the flabby wine in a lot of people's opinions when you look at it. So it's a fascinating thing that a film like this could have made some semblance of a difference in both of those sales for Merlot and Pinot Noir, Steve. So don't tell me there's not power in films, for God's sake.
I won't say that Sideways is to Merlot as Jaws is to sharks. But it did have a genuine effect.
Yeah.
It's not messing around, you know?
Jesus, no Merlot. Do not drink too much. Do you hear me? I don't want you passing out or going to the dark side. No going to the dark side.
Okay.
Have you ever had a friend that you've had to have this conversation with, or were you the friend that someone had a conversation with at some point in life where you had to say this to them, or you had this said to you, like, okay, look, don't go to the dark side. Keep it chill. Don't do this extra drinking. Like, have you ever had any experience like this?
So you have been around me drinking, I would say, many times. Have you ever seen me go to the dark side?
No, I've seen you go to let's talk about something ad nauseum to the minutia. Yes.
The minutia side, absolutely. I would totally cop to that. But I do not think I am a dark drinker. And yes, absolutely. Of course I have. And I'm sure that you have too had people, not necessarily that you would say, I mean, you know, frankly, my grandmother was an alcoholic who went to the dark side. And it was not pleasant. And I have many, many, many memories of family gatherings where I ended up in the back room with my grandmother where people are yelling at each other. And there's, you know, it's not fun. And I've known multiple people. And this is one of the things I believe, a largely happy drinker. If I have a couple of drinks, I feel joyful and want to talk to people and be more outgoing and having fun. I do not understand the people who love to drink and get morose and sad and angry and violent. Like, well, that doesn't seem like a fun thing to do. But yes, I've known many of them.
Yeah, well, I certainly was that in my 20s in the military. I was essentially a functioning alcoholic in the military. I drank so much every night, hanging out with the guys, doing all kinds of things. There are holes punched in walls. There are, you know, and that all comes from my own personal experience, comes from just an anger and a self-hatred, right? It comes out. The walls come down. And if you haven't come to terms with some of that within yourself, and, you know, a lot of people can't recognize that at that young age in their 20s, that's how it manifests itself, because little things start to take on much bigger importance than they actually do because you're drunk. And so, yeah, so him saying to Miles, don't go to the dark place, is a bit of a foreshadowing, because Miles is going to go to the dark place, as we see in this scene. But it's not a dark place of violence. It's a dark place of self-harm, you know.
Well, that's the thing I want to say is like, we talk about, you know, you're doing your big action movie and you have the oh shit moment, which is the bad guys have you surrounded and you're like, how is the hero going to get out of this thing?
Yeah.
And we don't think of independent character studies as having oh shit moments. But him saying, don't drink too much, don't go to the dark side. Yeah. We just saw him shaking his Xanax pills and screaming about Merlot. We are not feeling good. He just found out that his ex has gotten remarried and he's got to see her at the wedding. He's, you know, I'm really genuinely scared going into this next scene.
This is bad friend work. Let me just say that clearly. Was it Jack's sexual desire is overwhelming Miles's need to be taken care of. And he is putting him in this position. Any good friend with a level head on his shoulders would never have put their friend in this position, knowing the condition their friend is in mentally, as he's still recovering from a divorce. So anyway, they walk into the restaurant and exchange small talk about Stephanie getting off work and what Maya is drinking. This is such a great scene, Steve, of watching each speak their seduction language. By that, I mean Jack and Miles. Jack asks Stephanie about her job and her job duties to feign interest in her in order to gain her trust, while Miles talks about the wine and what he's smelling or what he's tasting. That's his safe place. That's his happy place. And then we go into this montage of them all talking and laughing and connecting, hearing about the specials, drinking and laughing some more, and getting closer as more and more bottles of wine we see, Steve, are coming to the table, and Miles is just quietly drinking.
Well, and this is the thing, and this is why it's so good, because I had this dread going into the scene.
Yes.
And now the first half of the scene, I'm like, oh, maybe it's going to be okay. Yeah. Like, and Maya is lovely and seems to have like the magic secret. She's like the Miles whisperer. She understands how to talk to him in a way that makes him feel comfortable. And he is smiling and they are connecting. And you have this moment of like, oh, good, it's going to be okay. And then just so beautifully, another bottle of wine comes in. And you're hearing those words of Jack's, like, don't go to the dark place, don't drink too much in your head. And you're seeing another glass and another glass. And you go, oh, no.
Right.
You know?
And this is yet another bad job by Jack, who Jack should have been limiting the amount of wine Miles was drinking, but he was too consumed with trying to get with Stephanie. As I said, Miles is quietly drinking all the wine and progressively getting that lockjaw that some people get, Steve, when they get inebriated or high or otherwise altered. Then the food comes, and he is now barely paying attention to Maya as Jack and Stephanie, we see, are getting closer. And then just under the din of the score, we hear the sounds of a ringtone. And we cut to Miles on a payphone calling his ex.
Hello?
Victoria?
Miles?
Well, Victoria, how the hell are you?
So this is, Steve, the moment where you're like, oh, no, this is Jon Favreau calling back after he made that one call in Swingers and then keeps calling back. We're about to enter that territory here.
So literally, I wrote down the note. It isn't quite as painful as the call in Swingers, which might be the most painful scene in movie history.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's up there. I love the sort of foreshadowing, the pre-cutting of seeing little clips of the phone before Miles gets up, because what it does emotionally, and I'm sure this wasn't planned, I'm sure this is the kind of discovery you make in the editing room, is what it does emotionally is it goes, oh, his mind is already there.
Right.
You know, he is, that's all he's thinking about at this moment, is that he's going to call Victoria.
He's calling her, yes.
And when we go, and it really hurts. This phone call really hurts.
What's on your mind?
Oh, nothing. I just heard that you got remarried. Congratulations. Boy, I didn't think you had the stomach for another go-round.
Oh, Miles, you're drunk.
This is Jessica Hecht, really fantastic actress.
That moment of you're drunk tells you so much about their relationship before.
Yep.
Because she knows what he's like when he's drunk.
Yes.
He's not abusive in the totally mean, destructive way. He is just indulging in his sadness in this incredible, painful way.
I agree with you 100%. That's why you have to find a great actress to do moments like this to know how to hit these emotional beats and notes softly And when she says that, oh, Miles, you're drunk, it is care laced with years of having dealt with him in this condition, as you said, Steve, because he's been a frustrated artist for years. And God knows how many times she's had to navigate him out of these drunken, self-indulgent or self-hating nights. And so, oh, Miles, you're drunk. You're so right to point that line out. Carries so much weight.
Well, and it's also her having to self-protect.
Yes.
Is that
100%.
she has been through this before.
Yep.
She has purposely separated herself from him. She has remarried.
Right.
She shouldn't have to deal with this anymore.
100%. 100%. And it's abusive of him to force her to by calling her and putting this on the table and surprising her instead of waiting till he's sober to have this conversation, right? But he's not thinking straight because he's drunk.
Where are you?
Little place in Los Olivos. New owners, cozy ambiance. Excellent food too. You should try it. I thought of you at the hitching post last night. Hello.
So he's trying to make her relive stuff that, like, go back in the past with me and indulge in this with me. And she clearly doesn't want to do that, Steve. She, as you said, she's moved on. So the pause makes all the sense in the world because she does not want to do this with him.
When I was 18, my first girlfriend broke up with me.
When I was 18, yes.
It was a very bad year.
Bad year.
My first girlfriend broke up with me, and I remember being on the phone with her, and it was I was just the saddest of sad sack phone calls. And because I just wanted her, and particularly that era, I was just in love with being in love, and you want to feel loved. And so then she broke up with me, and now I didn't feel loved. And I first I said, "Don't you love me anymore?" Which is a stupid question. And then I said, and it's so sad because you're hurting yourself. And what I said, I said, well, when you said you loved me before, were you lying? That's what I asked her.
Wow.
And what I realized years later, just looking back and thinking about it, is what I was doing is this weird thing people do of trying to essentially emotionally blackmail another person into coming back to you when they don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no answer to, well, when you said you loved me before, were you lying? That's not, there's no answer that she can give. And it's like, if she were to say, oh, I did manipulate her through my brilliant, rhetorical skills to decide that she did love me and come back into the relationship, is that going to be happy? Is it going to work? No, you can't manipulate, beg, push, pressure, anyone into loving you. It actually doesn't work. Love has to be the most voluntary action any human does, and no kind of manipulation. Particularly, he's calling his remarried ex, and still going, "How can I get you back?"
While he's on a date with someone else, right? Like in the middle, he's disrespecting two women at the same time, right?
Yeah,
to satisfy his own selfish. And look, it's understandable. We as men look, and I think that's what I like about the idea of Miles is like, for a lot of us, there's a lot of us that connect to that guy. I've been that guy. I've made that call. It's a horrible call. Certainly, my previous relationship, both of us made those calls to each other in different times and got back together, and it was never right. And those are those things where you haven't, but she's taken care of herself. She's moved on from it, and he wants to drag her back into the past because he can't move on, right? And you can assess it from an objective way. It's selfish, but also you have to feel a little sympathy, a little pity for Miles because he's not an abusive person. He's just
I feel a ton of pity.
Yeah.
I feel a ton of pity for him.
Yeah.
I feel horrible for him. I also just am so fucking frustrated with him that he's making these terrible, terrible choices.
Yeah. Sometimes these are the things we do to climb out of these situations, sadly.
Miles, don't call me when you're drunk.
And that is a soft but stern rebuke.
No, I wanted to let you know that I have decided not to come to the wedding. So just in case you were dreading some sort of, run-in or something like that, well, you worry no more because I'm not going to be there. It's my little wedding gift to you. And what's his name?
Now he's pretending like he doesn't know his name. She's with.
I'm gonna hang up now, Miles.
No, I heard about this for the first time today. You're getting remarried, that is. And I was kind of taken aback. I guess I thought maybe there was still a chance for us somewhere down the road, and I just...
And she says, which I think is one of the best, shutdowns.
Miles, maybe it is better if you don't come to the wedding.
All righty, Vicky, whatever you say. You're the boss.
Whew. The whole thing with Jack, where Jack said, "Hey, I talked to Victoria and all that stuff."
Yeah.
And now Miles goes into and now everybody's worried about whether or not I'm going to make a scene, and everyone's talking about that culminates with maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding, because now Victoria, who maybe hoped that he could get through the thing without making a scene, just got this fucking phone call from the guy, and it was like, yeah, I don't want a scene either. Like, I don't, at a certain point, I think Victoria, this is my sense, and we should say, as you mentioned, this is Jessica Hecht, who as Rox's ex-wife on Friends. She's in Breaking Bad. She's in The Boys. She did tons of theater, tons of TV, nominated for a Tony for View from a Bridge. This is a great, great actor. She's really good. And I think what's happening in this moment is she needs to protect herself, like she needs to protect Jack. She needs to protect the wedding. And I think that the sense I get from Victoria is she has been lovely and kind, or tried to be lovely and kind with Miles from the beginning of their relationship through. She's done her best to not create conflicts,
That's what we think. But Jack is going to give us a different point of view in a little bit, which I think we have to take into consideration with all of this, even though Jack is probably an unreliable narrator. As I said, Miles hangs up the phone, stumbles back to the table. As he settles in, Jack welcomes him back and laughs and says, take it easy, because he senses, Steve, that he knows that Miles is on the edge or on the brink here. Then Stephanie and Maya get up to go to the bathroom. And when they get far enough away, Jack wheels around and lays into Miles to get his shit together.
Why do you always have to do this? Victoria is gone. Gone. Poof. In the wind. I mean, you are blowing a great opportunity here with Maya. Maya, she's great. She's cool. She's funny. She knows wine. I mean, what is this morose come-down bullshit?
I am Team Jack. I mean, I'm not Team Jack, because Jack is an asshole in all sorts of ways. But Miles went to the dark place, exactly what Jack didn't want him to do. He is blowing a great opportunity with Maya. The call to Victoria is horrible and cruel anyway, and he is not, regardless of how you feel morally about Jack wanting to have an affair before he gets married. And we can have a whole conversation about that.
Right.
In this moment, what Miles is doing is not good.
No. And Jack tries. And I think with the messed up nature of Jack, he still does care about Miles, and he's trying.
These girls want to party with us. Huh? And what was that 10-minute lecture on, what was Vouvrays? Are you kidding me? Who gives a fuck?
Let's just say that I'm uncomfortable with the whole scenario.
And Jack does something here that I think is good for a friend to do sometimes. And I had friends do this with me in my previous relationship. He says to him,
have you forgotten all the bad times you had with Victoria? How small she can make you feel? Isn't that why you had the affair with Brenda in the first place?
Shut your face. Shut up.
So there we have it, Steve. A different point of view, not only on Victoria, because possibly she did make him feel small, because maybe she had her own issues going on at the same time. They were just not a good match. But now we get this revelation that he had the affair, and that is what probably led to the end of their relationship. And that may be why he feels that there's a chance to get her back, because if he apologizes enough about the relationship or brings her back to places where they were in love, she could forget about the affair and they could get back together. So it's a very complex back and forth here between these guys, deceptively so. What are your thoughts?
I'd totally forgotten. I think you said that you had too, that the backstory is that Miles had an affair. Like that just, because it just seems out of character for this kind of sad sack of a guy that we've been meeting this whole time. Right. I think the thing about Victoria made you feel small is a perfect encapsulation of not codependency exactly, but how a couple can conspire together to make something shitty, which is that Miles's insecurity and all of his depression and sadness combined with Victoria's personality conspired together to make him feel small.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like I could just picture it. It's just so clear in my mind that it's not, I don't see it as Victoria's fault, like she was intentionally belittling him or anything like that. And I don't see it as Miles's fault that he was asking for it. I see it as the two of them, their personalities coming together had that result. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, as I've alluded to in my previous relationship, I feel a connection to this moment because certainly a lot of my friends, including my friend on the other side of this microphone, had tried to get me to see what was happening, tried to get me to focus on, hey, why do you keep wanting her back when this is the way she makes you feel? Why do you forget the things you've told us about how she makes you feel? The thing is, when you're in that low self-esteem, low self-worth, sad place where you feel like your life hasn't culminated in anything and you meet someone that you think is great and upwardly mobile and all this, the abuse sometimes disappears in the distance because you think that this other thing, this idealized version of this other thing is possible. And that's what drives you to keep trying to stay with that person because you think you can create this fantasy and that never comes to be. And the truth is that you're both wrong for each other and that you don't realize that when you're in it. It's only when you've had some distance and time away from it that you see that it wasn't the right thing for you because, from my own personal experience, I am so much happier and fulfilled and in a much better relationship than I was previously because this is a person who actually does care about me, wants to be with me, supports me, loves me, and I return that as well. And so it's a whole different ballgame. But when you're in it, you think you're not worth it, you can't get it, so you hold on to it desperately. And that's what I think I sense here from Miles and Jack saying these things to Miles.
Have you even noticed how Maya's looking at you? Oh, come on, man. You've got her on the hook. Reel her in. Let's ratchet this up a notch. Here, drink some agua fria.
Just then, Maya and Stephanie come back. Miles asks if they should get some dessert. And Stephanie suggests instead that they should go back to her place, Steve, since she's got wine and cheese there, which elicits a funny "yeah" from Jack, which I think is really funny.
It's so funny that people I know they're people like this, and I've met them, guys who get all sorts of women with this kind of behavior, and this kind of behavior seems so like transparently transactional. It's like the used car salesman. Like I wouldn't buy from this person, but this totally works for Jack. It works many, many times. As he says earlier, all sorts of women, all ages, dudes too. Everyone finds him attractive.
Well, the kinds of people who find him attractive are into that route. Maya would never find Jack attractive. So it's all about the kinds of people that are finding him attractive with this kind of behavior. So we cut to Miles and Jack arriving at Stephanie's. He gives Miles 1 condom and keeps 3 for himself.
Seems right. Okay. Seems accurate.
Miles asks Jack if he's sure he wants to do this, to which Jack stops, sighs, and then goes through the door. So Miles tries to stop him one last time from going through with this, but Jack isn't hearing it, man. In fact, he thinks it's insulting that Miles would even ask him if he wants to do this.
Well, I mean, and this is where it is interesting that part of why Miles's marriage ended was because of an affair.
Yes.
And that he had a whole conversation of it's never free, there's always a price. And now here Jack is, and anyone listening, you can have all your own opinions about, is there a difference between someone having an affair when they're engaged versus when they're married, or what is okay on a quote unquote bachelor weekend, or what rules apply to dudes versus rules that apply. And I know there are opinions about these things out there, but there's no question that Jack is taking a risk because we're going to see consequences later on. And in my opinion, that, on the strictly moral purity level, what Jack is doing is completely wrong, and it's going to become way more fucking wrong as he progresses.
Because he doubles down on it, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
They walk in, Stephanie's, they get greeted by Stephanie, and Jack sneaks in a kiss right off the bat here, Steve, which I guess he's just going to go for it. Stephanie sends Miles to the back to see Maya, who's going through Stephanie's wine.
Hey, Steph! Yeah? Can we really open anything we want?
Yeah, anything. Except the Richebourg.
This impresses Miles that Stephanie even has a Richebourg.
Richebourg? She has a Richebourg?
Which Maya pulls out with a cute, impish snicker. Now, do you know about these Richebourg wines here, Steve?
I do not. I know nothing about wine. I'm not a wine person, so...
Well, the reason he's impressed by this is these wines are some of the most opulent wines from the Vosne-Romanée area, exhibiting early earthy characters along with dense fruit, and they are capable of being cellared for many years, and they range in price from $1,500 to $2,500 a bottle. So
Wow.
I think that also adds to his impressive face that Stephanie could afford a bottle of Richelieu like this.
But and this is what I find so interesting, and it's directly connected in my mind to this location.
Yes.
Which is, I think this is a perfect location, and it's the kind that you don't generally see in movies.
Yeah.
And I have been to many versions of this house.
Yeah.
Which is that it's a house of someone who doesn't have a lot of money, and maybe they have artistic sensibilities and they have dreams that they're pursuing while they do their day job. And there's a lot of life stuff, but the house is not neat. It's not well managed. It's very messy. You could tell the furniture is hand-me-downs or wherever they got it, covered with a whole bunch of stuff. I've totally been in this house so many times. And the fact that she has a many $1,000 bottle of wine and lives in this house is telling us so much about who this person is and what she values.
Yeah. Yeah, the mismatched furniture. Yeah, you're so right on that, Steve. Well, Maya puts the Richelieu back and pulls out an Andrew Murray Syrah, saying this is more their speed. They go into the kitchen. Maya opens the bottle. They talk about Miles's wine collection now, and that the star of his collection is a 1961 Cheval Blanc. For those of you who don't know, the Cheval Blanc is a blend of Cabernet Franc and Merlot. It is arguably one of the best and most expensive wines in Bordeaux, and 1961 is regarded as one of the best years of the 20th century for that wine. RobertParker.com, which is the well-regarded website on wines, gives it a score of a 93. They describe it as an opaque, dark ruby garnet with a rust-colored edge. This wine is a big, full-blown bouquet of burnt tobacco and earthy, gravelly scents. And on the palate, it is sweet, ripe, full-bodied, extremely soft and supple, and clearly at its apogee. So there you go.
I'm going back to the Outlaw Nation wine show because the description you just gave me of that wine was, I could almost taste it. It was so sensual, I will say. Like, I think there's a whole career for you here.
I think Jack wanted me to get into wine stores as well. Anyway, so I love this, that this is being set up, right, Steve? This is a plant because later we're going to see that he's drinking this bottle out of a styrofoam cup in a Jack in the Box or something. So this is an important plant for the movie.
You've got a 61 Cheval Blanc and it's just sitting there?
Yes, I do.
Go get it.
Okay.
I'm serious. Hurry.
I would.
I mean, I think the 61s are peaking right now, aren't they? At least that's what I've read.
No, that's right, yeah.
It might be too late already. What are you waiting for?
Oh, I don't know. Special occasion with the right person. It was supposed to be for my 10th wedding anniversary, but...
And then trails off. And Maya senses this. Maya, remember, she is going through her own post-divorce life here.
You know, the day you open a 61 Cheval Blanc, that's the special occasion.
I love that. I think it says in one line, it captures not only Son of Maya's way of looking at the world, but her wisdom.
Yeah.
Like, is that, because I'm sure you've had these things in your life, like, oh, I got to save that for when it's special. And sometimes that's great. You know, sometimes it's a really good thing to do. But it's also like, there's only now. Now is the only time we have, you know?
Right.
And so saving things for when they're special, it's like, make now special.
Yeah, because I think he thinks of this wine as the wine he's going to open up when he gets back together with Victoria.
Totally thinks. I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what he's holding it for. It is this. Yeah. He said it was of the 10th wedding anniversary, which they didn't make. But now that she's gotten remarried, where's he put this wine? But he was holding it for that special occasion of getting back together with her. And you're right. Maya is much more like, now's the time, you know?
You know what just occurred to me too, as we were speaking, is that Jack is a guy who lives in the now.
Yes.
And Miles is a guy who lives in the past and deep, deep, deep in the future.
Yes.
And there's real problems with both of those philosophies, as we'll see, you know.
Yeah. So, how long have you been into wine?
I got serious about 7 years ago.
And what was the bottle that did it?
88 Sassicaia.
Now, this is based on Payne's own experience, Alexander Payne's own experience in 1991 with an ex-girlfriend of his and her family. They shared a bottle of 88 Sassicaia and he said it opened his mind to the greatness of wine. And here's the description of the Sassicaia. It's jewel red, waves of cured leather, olive paste, undergrowth, rich, peaty aromatics, coffee grounds, cedar. This has campfire smoke and crushed rose petals set against luscious grilled red cherry fruits, laced with fennel, and a softly enticing tannic architecture that is lace fine, and it is $950 a pop. That is Not a cheap bottle of wine.
I stand by my original statement of the Outlaw Nation wine share. I'm just 100%. I've already subscribed. I'm ready to support you on Patreon.
To be fair, I'm not writing these. I'm just reciting with the
but
better people.
Your voice, man, your voice.
Put this in your mouth. Anyway, all right. So,
You got kids?
Me? No. I just fuck them up. No, that was the one unpolluted part of my divorce. No kids.
So that's an interesting way to look at it, Steve. Both without children, but him calling it the unpolluted part of their divorce.
Honestly, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, if it's certainly, as a person who is divorced and has a kid, it's hard, and so Miles having at least the clarity of mind to know that at least he didn't fuck up. And, to be real honest, I don't think Miles would have been such a great dad.
Yeah.
In the last, so him calling it the unpolluted part of his divorce, no kids, I think that's some real self-awareness.
Well, we're seeing this dance, aren't we, Steve? We're going to move into the second section of the dance here in just a second. There, like she's just being herself. She's clearly somewhat interested, and it's slowly starting to work on Miles. The walls are coming down step by step. He's just not ready to, but certainly there are moments here that are opening up between them and in the interaction. And again, this is wonderful acting from Virginia Madsen and Paul Giamatti, as they're two people post-divorce coming from two different angles to this possible relationship and the way they're slowly kind of figuring it out together.
So what's your novel about?
What's my... Oh, brother. Well, it's difficult to summarize. It starts out as a kind of a first-person narrative about a guy taking care of his father after a stroke. And it's kind of based on personal experience, but only loosely.
What's the title?
The Day After Yesterday.
Oh. You mean today?
It's having had to describe, just this weekend I had to describe something to family members. It's so hard. It's so awkward. And sometimes I've done a good job and sometimes I haven't done a good job. Miles does not do a good job here.
I love Miles's reaction, Paul Giamatti's reaction when she says today. It's almost as if he hadn't considered that could be the meaning of the title or the definition of the title.
A lot of other things happen. Parallel narratives, kind of a mess. And then eventually the whole thing sort of evolves or devolves into this sort of Rob Grier mystery,
That's a hell of a description. It goes all over the place. But I looked up Rob Grier mystery. I don't know what this is, Steve. I looked and I couldn't find anything.
Never heard of it.
That was connected to a Rob Grier mystery. So, and I did all kinds of research and I couldn't find anything.
Well, I think it's really great you're getting it published. Really. I mean, I know how hard it is just to write it even.
Yeah.
I mean, like me, I've got this paper due on Friday and I'm freaked out about it, just like in high school.
A paper, huh?
Yeah, I'm going for a master's degree in horticulture. Sort of chipping away at it.
Horticulture? Yeah. Wow. So do you want to work in a winery or something?
Maybe.
Tell me about that pause, Steve, because there is so much in that pause, and there's so much in the way she says maybe. Is she really considering? Is she not considering it? Has she not even considered what her future is going to be? Or is this a thing of like, you know what, I'm not committing to anything right now. I'm just kind of in the air, and we'll see where I land. What do you think of this?
Let me ask you this question first.
Oh, okay.
Which is Miles happy about his book and his book being published, being talked about?
No. I don't think he's happy about his book being talked about because it's not published. That's what I think.
Yeah. I think she is wise enough to not discuss what her big plans are, which is, of course, she wants to work at a winery.
Oh.
I think if she says, I want to work at my plan is to work at a winery and that's going to make my life great. Well, then she's setting herself up for exactly the disappointment that Miles is getting now that everybody's talking about his book being published.
Right.
I think she is being wise and protecting herself. That's what I think.
That's a great analysis on that line. I will go with that.
So when can I read your book?
Well, I do happen to have a manuscript in my car.
And as Miles agrees to give a manuscript to her, we hear Stephanie moaning, which causes them to go outside now and sit on these deep, soft couches. And then we get this really phenomenal monologue. She asks him why he's so into Pinot, and he delivers this monologue, which doubles, as we said earlier, as a description of himself.
It's a hard grape to grow, as you know, right? It's thin-skinned, temperamental, ripens early. It's, it's not a survivor like Cabernet, which can just grow anywhere and thrive even when it's neglected. Nah, Pinot needs constant care and attention.
I think this description is so perfectly him.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that he knows that this is him, that he's talking about himself?
Well, I think he's a writer who's a little bit up his own butt. So I would think, yes, there's a part of him that thinks this is about him because he's romanticized this grape in this way to make it reflective of him. Like, we don't know if other people do feel this way about Pinot grapes would describe in quite this manner. But the fact that he's describing it this way, and that's his favorite wine to drink, I think he's kind of massaged the point of view of what he thinks of these grapes to fit his own feelings about himself. Whether he's aware that he's done that or not is a separate question, but I think that is what's going on here.
And I think that the idea of there can be this thing that is fragile, temperamental, unpredictable, difficult in all these ways, and yet be loved, actually, that all of that stuff doesn't mean it doesn't have value. And we have watched up to this point, Miles be thin-skinned, temperamental, difficult, all these things. And we've been frustrated with him. I'll just say I have been very frustrated with Miles multiple times. And yet in this monologue, he's saying, I still have value. I don't know that he knows that that's what he's saying.
Right.
But that's how I'm feeling, is that he can value this grape that other people might overlook for being difficult and just like go, it's not worth the time. But for him, it is worth the time.
And only the most patient and nurturing of growers can do it, really. Only somebody who really takes the time to understand Pinot's potential can then coax it into its fullest expression. And then, its flavors, they're just the most haunting and brilliant and thrilling and subtle and ancient on the planet.
It's a beautiful monologue. Jesus Christ, it's a beautiful monologue.
It's so good. I couldn't agree more. And it's like, this is the kind of thing where you would go, oh, come on, isn't this a little on the nose? Are we being a little too obviously symbolic? And it doesn't play that way at all.
Nope.
It plays so gentle and it's so perfect. It's just the perfect mix of writing and performance and editing and camera and everything that's been set up by Alexander Payne to make it just a perfect moment.
And we're still within the 24 hours that Miles has found out about, or maybe a little bit longer than 24 hours, but we're still within the day or a little bit more that Miles has found out about his ex-wife getting remarried. He's, battled over the Merlot and the Xanax with Jack, had this conversation on the phone with Victoria, and now at Stephanie's place. And so the fact that he can deliver this monologue here with the walls kind of down, and I think this is him beginning to trust Maya as well, because he's revealing this about himself, right? Even if he knows it is or isn't, he is revealing why he loves the Pinot grape, how romantically he views the Pinot grape. And I don't think he surrenders this to anybody. And Maya's reaction to the wines has made him comfortable enough to reveal this.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah. Is that because just anyone wouldn't get it. He couldn't say this to Jack. Jack would be like, "Oh, that's interesting. Whatever. Sounds like a weird grape, man." Right. Like he wouldn't have any. Like Maya's the only person other than Victoria who has the perception to understand what he's saying.
Right. Yeah, I don't think Stephanie would have got it. I don't think Greg, the bartender, would have got it. It's only Maya for this particular situation that he delivers it. And this may be the only time he's ever delivered it quite like this.
And then the last line of the monologue is,
no, Cabernets can be powerful and exalting too, but they seem prosaic to me for some reason, by comparison. I don't know.
And I went, Jack is a cab.
That's great. Alexander Payne says, my writing partner, Jim Taylor, and I wrote that Pinot speech, and it's suggested by something in the original Rex Pickett novel, as I recall. So Rex Pickett inspired, but it was written specifically by Jim Taylor and Alexander Payne. And then once again, Steve, and maybe because he, has revealed this to her and he feels comfortable asking her this again, he wants to know, why are you into wine? He's just revealed this. So why are you into wine? And this is almost like where you talk about, oh yeah, what was your best relationship or worst relationship? Like you have those conversations with new loves or new possible relationships where you find some common ground to speak about common experiences. And he's using wine as a way of doing that. And she reveals that she got into wine through her ex-husband because of his big show-off cellar.
But then I discovered that I had a really sharp palate. And the more I drank, the more I liked what it made me think about.
It's very interesting, Steve. And she says,
I like to think about the life of wine. Yeah. How it's a living thing. I like to think about what was going on the year the grapes were growing. How the sun was shining. If it rained. I like to think about all the people who tended and picked the grapes. And if it's an old wine, how many of them must be dead by now? I like how wine continues to evolve.
So, in a way, she's matching him now, Steve, because the things she's saying are about her as well. That she's a person who thinks about more than just the wine. She sees it as a living thing, just like she is. And who tended her, who took care of her, and the people must be dead by now. Maybe her parents, maybe the people, like whatever. But she's talking about evolving, right? Because she's evolving. She's pulled herself out of this relationship. She's divorced him, and she's changing. She's growing. She's pursuing things that maybe she wasn't allowed to pursue or didn't feel confident enough to pursue in the previous marriage.
So two things. The first is there are tons of movies that have great monologues in them. I can't think of a single movie that has two great monologues back to back.
That's a great point.
And they're equal. I couldn't put one above the other. I think they're both fantastic. I think they're both totally amazing. What's really interesting is you interpret her monologue in an entirely different way symbolically than I interpret it.
Oh, okay.
And your interpretation, I'm not saying it's totally valid, of course.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me about her monologue is in his monologue, he's the grape. I'm the difficult Pinot that needs to be loved and cared about. In her monologue, she's not talking about the grapes. She's talking about the growers. She's the grower in my mind, is that she is associating with herself with the people that care for the difficult grape. Is that's why she is the other piece of him. She is going, I am difficult, but I have all this potential if only someone would love me. And she is going, I'm fascinated by the people that tend the grapes and their lives and how all the love that they put into the grapes. And I'm like, that's why to me, like, it's two amazing fucking monologues, but it's also two monologues that are showing why this actually could work. Is that, and the other thing is, even in the moment in his monologue, when she goes, if it's cared for right, he's saying if the grape is cared for correctly, and we cut to Virginia Madsen smiling to him because she sees him and understands how to care for him and sees him as special, even though everybody else might see him as prickly and difficult and sad and all the things that we see that are true. She sees why he's a great Pinot grape. And so like the whole way that she talks, I'm seeing like she's the grower, he's the grape.
He's the wine.
He can become the fine wine. Exactly.
Yes. How he continues to evolve.
Yes.
Right? And she continues this monologue and says, and this may prove Steve's analysis of it here.
Like if I opened a bottle of wine today, it would taste different than if I'd opened it on any other day. Because a bottle of wine is actually alive. And it's constantly evolving and gaining complexity. That is until it peaks. Like you're 61. And then it begins its steady, inevitable decline. And it tastes so fucking good.
Amazing.
I mean, great stuff, Steve.
It's totally amazing. And I love the way she talks about wine. It's fucking poetry. And you can literally watch him fall in love with her.
Yes. in that moment.
In this scene, you
Totally.
can see him just the barriers fall down and he looks at her and he loves her and understands her in this deep way. It's amazing.
I think he's beginning to love her. I think 100% you're right there. And because the way she spoke about wine matched the way he spoke about wine, not just in the kind of understanding, but the language that she uses, the intelligence, right? A writer respecting another possible writer and to a degree. And so there is an attraction, not only just possibly at a physical level. I'm sure Virginia's gorgeous. Why wouldn't you? But also at an intellectual level, which is where Miles needs to find the attraction in order to be in a relationship. And so she's really broke through in that way, just being herself and speaking about it. Because as she finishes the speech, her hand is on his hand and she is staring deeply into his eyes, and Miles is completely caught up in this, as Steve alluded to.
I think the amazing choice in this is we don't see the moment that she puts her hand on his.
Yeah.
That is because in every, of course, if I'm directing a scene and she's going to put her hand on his, I'm going to film that moment.
Right.
And it's obvious to me that I have to show that moment because it's a dramatic moment. And it would be obvious to me that I would see the hand touch his hand. And then I would cut to Paul Giamatti to see his reaction to the hand on his. Right. And then I would probably cut back to Virginia Madsen to see her seeing him react to her putting her hand on his. That is exactly how I would edit that scene. And that is exactly what they don't do in this, is that you don't know when that hand went there. It's mysterious. And I think that choice is so much better than the choice that I would have made.
Interesting. Well, Alexander says about the speech, Alexander Payne, he says, I wrote Maya speech about why she likes wine because that speech is quite personal to me. Jim and I did some rewriting on it, his co-writer, Jim Taylor, of course, but that's largely how I feel about wine. So interesting. I thought he would have seen himself more like Miles, but maybe he sees himself a little bit more like Maya. But Miles, now noticing the hand thing, he pulls away, breaking their growing connection, and talks about liking other wines like Rieslings. And if she likes Rieslings, I mean, this is like John Candy and Steve Martin. Hell of a Bears game. She responds with a simple because she's not afraid of their growing connection. She knows, as you said, Steve, she's the grower. He's the temperamental grape. And him pulling away, she's not going to give him a reaction of like, oh, you're pulling away. She's more just like observing him.
Yeah, she gets it. Yeah, exactly. She's like, yep, okay, I can see him becoming a little more nervous, and this is why, and this is what I need to do to tend to this grape right now. You know,
women are so smart, man. And guys, be honest with yourselves. Women are super fucking smart about this stuff. He can't take it anymore, Miles, and excuses himself to head to the bathroom, leaving her there to think about their exchange. He washes his face and calls himself a fucking loser in the mirror.
Oh, God, you're such a fucking loser. You make me so fucking sick.
Steve, what is going on here? What is the self-hatred that is going on here in this moment when he's had just a beautiful connection with Maya?
I mean, my guess is that you have done this in the mirror.
I mean, maybe.
I've never been quite as mean to myself as he is right at this moment.
Right.
But I have certainly looked in the mirror and gone, come on, man, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because he chickened out. He got scared. He got freaked out. He started talking about Rieslings. He saw, she put her hand on his.
Yeah.
That is not her. That means that the connection is real, that she's into it, that she's attracted to it. It's all there. And he ran away. So, and he's got to yell at himself.
Right. This is fucking crazy. This is crazy. Yeah, basically he's doing that. You're so effing sick. So he walks out and sees her in the kitchen through the doorway and takes a moment to compose himself before walking into the kitchen. I love this shot, Steve. Alexander Payne, keeps that camera at the end of one room and we watch him in one room and her in the kitchen in another room. It is genius to keep us away from them. It's so smart. He walks up to her in the kitchen as she talks about drinking water, and after a beat, he awkwardly grabs her by the back of the head and kisses her. But Alexander Payne, as I said, leaves us in the room outside the kitchen, so we're watching this all from afar, which adds to the awkwardness of it all. In my opinion, Steve, he completely blows the moment here, and it feels like he kisses her out of place of desperation, trying to recapture that moment that just happened on the couch, rather than an organic moment because she pulls back and says she should really go. What are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on the framing of the shot?
Yeah, I know that they actually did go in and do closer shots. and Alexander Payne made the choice to stay away, which I think again is a really, really great choice. I think it's very much as you describe. There was a real moment happening before, which he chickened out of. And then he has the moment in the bathroom where he insults himself, and then he gets up the courage to do this thing. Here's what I really think about it though, is Maya is so smart. Maya's reading him like a book. Yes. She knows every move that is happening, and she understands the chickening out. She knows he had that moment in the bathroom. He knows that he got up his courage to do this move, and she knows it's not right now.
Yeah.
And she knows, like, okay, this is what it is. She doesn't push him away. She doesn't reject him. She just is wisely going, this is not the moment for that.
Yeah.
And moves forward.
Yeah, I agree. We cut to Miles following behind her in his car, and she leads him to a clearing. She gets out of her car and gives him directions back to the windmill and says she had a nice time. Do you believe her, Steve, that she had a nice time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You don't? You don't think she had a nice time?
Oh, I do. But I think a little bit is her trying to make him feel better about the situation as well.
Yeah, I think there's that.
Okay, well, I'll see you around then.
Did you still want to read my novel?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
He gives her 2 boxes full of pages to read. She is a bit taken aback in a small moment of humor. They say goodnight, and she actually gives him a kiss on the cheek, and as if to say, it's okay. It was fumbled, but we'll recapture it down the road.
I think the kiss on the cheek is lovely because it really does say, this door is not closed.
Right.
Like, I don't want you to think that this door is closed.
Yeah.
I want you to think exactly what I want you to think, which is I like you. It's been nice. I care about you. The second box, when the second box comes out, is hilarious. And it's such as the writer who has handed people scripts in the past, I've never handed anybody anything that long, but like I cannot begin to tell you the level of neediness a writer can have for wanting someone to read their work. And I believe that it is, I would speak only for myself, it is at least equal, if not more so, than being personally rejected. Like if you gave me a choice between someone is going to like you versus someone's going to like your work, a big part of me is like, I prefer you like my work.
Wow.
I mean, that's, that is the level, like if people posted a review on Apple Podcasts and gave Cine-Files 5 stars and said, hey, I love this show. I think it's fantastic. Steve Morris drives me nuts. I can't fucking listen to him, but I keep listening to the show. I'd be like, cool, fine with me. Like it is so, and I can feel it for Miles. And you'll see part of the journey is that she's going to read his book.
Right.
Like that's where we're going to get to at the end of the movie. This is an important thing. And his neediness of needing to kiss her awkwardly in the kitchen, this moment of, hey, you said you would read my book is equal. It is the same. It is not, these are not like one is more important than the other.
Well, it also signals in this moment that he does still like value her opinion. He does still want her to like read his stuff. It's again, putting down the walls of vulnerability, because you're as a writer, you don't hand your stuff to just anybody.
No.
And you may be desperate to have it read, but you also want it to be read by people who are legitimately going to read it and give you feedback. And in that moment, he does that. And he does try to give her the out, you can stop reading anytime, whatever. But she's got that energy where she's going to read it. It may take her a bit, but she's going to read it. And I think that's a great thing to see. We cut to a graphic that reads Tuesday. My God, we're only at Tuesday. Miles is woken up in his hotel by a ringing cell phone. Who could this be, Steve? Because Jack is not in his hotel bed. Well, it's Christine, of course. Miles doesn't answer it and tries to go back to bed. Then the phone in the hotel room rings now. And we cut to later as Miles has fallen asleep again, but is woken up by the sounds of a motorcycle, and Jack barrels through the door.
Fucking chick is unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Woo. What? Oh, she is nasty, Miles. Nasty, nasty, nasty.
Oh, Jack. I think the double hit of the phone calls from Christine and Jack showing up all happy after I won't say a failed evening with Maya at all, because I think it was an amazing evening with Maya.
Yes.
But I think there's let's throw Miles into just a turmoil of complicated emotions.
Yeah, 100%. So Jack, of course, should have called Christine in the morning, but of course he doesn't want to blow his opportunity with Stephanie. Doesn't want her to find out about it. So he kind of let Miles take the hit on all this stuff without thinking about it. But Miles walks out to the balcony and Stephanie is out on her motorcycle waiting for Jack.
Oh, hi, Miles.
Hi.
Jack tells Miles that there's been a change of plans and he is hanging out with Stephanie today when they were supposed to be going golfing together, Miles and Jack.
You know what? You go, man. You go. In fact, use my clubs. They're brand new. They were a gift from Christine's dad. Here, I'll pay for it. Right there.
Here's my question for you, John. Jack obviously knew that he wanted to get laid on this trip.
Yes.
Before the trip started, when they were talking about we're going to go up to wine country, we're going to play golf, we're going to do this. Did Miles know that Jack was going to want to get laid?
I think so, but I also think Miles lives in a place of a fantasy at times. And so maybe he thought he could talk him out of it or he wouldn't go through with it, or he lives in a place of hope. Like maybe at some point, maybe Jack won't do it, right? He says all this stuff and maybe Jack won't do it because of Christine and the possibility for his life with Christine. So I think he thought maybe Jack talked a good game, but he wasn't actually going to do it. But see, now he clearly is doing it.
I think that in all of their discussions of this great trip to the wine country, Jack never mentioned getting laid.
Oh.
And I think that Miles, in his head, thought they were going to do exactly what they said they were going to do, which is go drink wine, hang out together, have guy time, play a lot of golf, watch some TV, and that was going to be the trip. And so now, suddenly, Jack is just saying, bye, I'm heading out, you go golf on your own. It's fucked up. And I think Miles is really genuinely like, dude, I thought we were hanging out, you know?
It's even more fucked up that he throws money at him. And that he tells him to use the clubs Christine's dad bought for Jack.
Yeah.
He wants you to use so that you're constantly reminded of what I'm doing behind Christine's back by using these golf clubs. It's so dumb on so many levels what Jack is doing, but Jack is absolutely all about himself and he's only focused on getting his sexual needs met in this situation. And in fact, Jack is so selfish that when Miles declines the offer...
No, count me out.
Huh, I see. Didn't go so great last night, huh? What a shocker. You mean getting drunk and calling Victoria didn't put you in the mood?
Then he calls him a dumb fuck out of an unsympathetic anger place.
Yeah, well, maybe you should check your messages first.
We're seeing now the fracture between the two of them a little bit because Jack feels like he's got the high ground here, but Miles is constantly chipping away at this belief that Jack has about having the high ground in the situation.
Well, they both obviously have the high ground because in Jack's worldview, the goal is to get laid. And so him calling Victoria and his behavior, he perfectly could have had sex with Maya if he had only followed the patented Jack method of not actually caring about a whole bunch of things that Jack doesn't care about. And Miles 100% has the high ground because he's been listening to the fucking messages from Christine, who's calling the guy that she loves, who she's about to marry, not knowing that he's out fucking Stephanie. So like Miles believes that he has the high ground and they both in their worldview do.
Jack walks back in, stomps back in and sees that Christine has been leaving messages and Miles says, maybe you should call her. And when he tries to get out of it, Miles yells at him, right now. And Jack goes into whip dog mode and asks Miles to leave the room while he calls Christine. And this leads to an awkward exchange between him and Stephanie out on the balcony before they slip into an uncomfortable silence. He tells her that Jack had to make a phone call. And Jack then asks Miles to come back in the room and wants to know if he has the other condom. Not, I'm sorry for yelling at you, not for calling you a bad name, or thanks for holding on and taking those calls for Christine. I know they bothered you. No, do you have the other condom?
It's funny. I mean, this is why it's so funny when you said, hey, we're going to do Sideways. It's this awesome comedy. And it's like, I don't actually think of this as a comedy exactly, but there are so many things that are really funny. And asking for the condom back that he gave him the night before is hilarious.
What did Christine say?
Oh, lucked out. Got voicemail. Everything's cool.
What a man-child. What a child.
Yep. By the way, I also have to admit there are times where I have had the thought, oh, I lucked out. I got their voicemail.
I think we've all been there. Yeah. We've all been there for sure. We hear the motorcycle motor rev up and Miles watches them right away with a look of disdain, jealousy, judgment, resentment, anger. What's the look on his face, Steve? I went through all those possibilities in my head as I was watching this scene.
Disappointment, judgment. Yeah. I think Miles has them all. Jealousy, sadness, loneliness, frustration. I think Miles has a plethora of emotions going on right now.
A plethora, I like that. And speaking of those plethora of emotions, we cut to a montage of these plethora of emotions as Miles cuts his toenails on the balcony, gets coffee, grades papers in the pool, checks his messages, eats alone, and then golfs alone and heads back to his room and walks in on Jack and Stephanie having sex there on Jack's bed. And Jack, without missing a thrust, says, "Not now, not now," and waves him away. And Stephanie doesn't even stop having sex with Jack, for God's sakes.
Well, clearly Jack and Stephanie have a simpatico sort of thing going on.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Jack is totally lying to her maybe interferes with that a little bit, but at the moment it all seems to be working great. I think, man, Miles' day by himself. First of all, again, we've talked many times about those actors who are natural athletes and were so good at hitting baseballs and riding horses. Paul Giamatti does not play golf. He's not a good golfer. And the things of like him, with his toenails and it's just Alexander Payne going like, yeah, this is what life looks like. And because we've all cut our toenails. We've all done these things,
Right.
And by the way, Paul Giamatti was not on the set the day that they were having sex. He does not walk in on them. This is one area where you actually don't want to show up for the other actors. That was just them on a closed set.
Yeah, and Alexander Payne was asked about shooting this with his wife at the time, which was Sandra Oh. And he was just like, yeah, we turned it into a fun little game. And I just told them to go for it. And of course, 2 years later, they were divorced. So who knows how much of the fun little game maybe messed with the way this whole thing went down. Because it's a pretty graphic scene, for God's sakes. So Miles uncomfortably heads to the hotel bar. And a little bit later, Jack walks in, probably unshowered, probably still with his sex in his underwear there, to share some wine with him and talks about his time with Stephanie in the Pinot fields and that he's grasping the progress of making wine. And I wrote here, he's doing that thing that messed up people do when they know they fucked up. They try to talk to you about something that you like to talk about in order to smooth things over. And it's not working because Miles can totally see through it, Steve.
What the fuck are you doing? What?
With this chick.
Why?
Does she know about Saturday?
Jack hems and haws and says not exactly, but lies that he's been honest with her because he told her that he's not available and then the trip is only for a few days. And I wrote, put a pin in this. And then Jack says,
the wedding?
What?
Yeah, I just been doing some thinking about it.
Oh, you've been thinking, right? And?
Might have to put the wedding on hold.
And this shocks Miles. So here we go, Steve. We've been leading to this moment where Jack finally admits that he is. This is the reason why he's doing the things that he's doing is that he's scared to get married or he's not sure he should get married, and so he's acting out in this way.
First of all, I haven't exactly told her, but I haven't been dishonest with her. That is a classic. Anytime you have those thoughts, you should check yourself a little bit.
100%.
And I think maybe I'm making a terrible mistake has been in Jack's mind for 6 months. And he's finally voicing it,
I think it's been that way since they started the relationship.
Probably. Yeah.
And I've been in this. A woman I dated a few years ago, she was so all about our relationship, and I could not feel the things that I was supposed to feel for her. We stayed together for a long time, but I kept trying to feel the things for her that I should feel, and I never happened, and I could never explain it. But, you kept finding your way, and then eventually we did break up because eventually I just couldn't put it together. And I feel like because I wasn't honest with myself, and I should have been honest because I was desperate to be with somebody, and I should have ended it as soon as I sensed that I couldn't give her what she wanted. But I think Jack sees Christine as some kind of lifesaver or some kind of, thing you throw out in the water, their lifesaver, yeah. And he is holding on to her with every ounce of his being, and we'll see later on how much of that is within him when he breaks down in front of Miles. And now he tries to validate his feelings about the situation, Steve, and put them in a magnanimous light.
I know that could be tricky for certain people to accept at first, all right? But life is short, Miles. I have to be sure I'm doing the right thing before taking such a big step. And you know what? That's not just for my sake. I'm looking out for Christine's feelings, too.
This fucker is shameless, bro. He is shameless.
Well, this is why I bounce back and forth between like, oh my God, Miles is the worst. Oh my, no, Jack is the worst. No, Miles is the worst. Like you're so frustrated with both of them throughout this thing. And the looking out, I wrote down when he says he's looking out for Christine's feelings. I'm like, oh, that's so nice of you, Jack. What a sweetheart you are to be fucking this other woman and describing how you're really looking out for your fiance's feelings. That's fantastic.
I mean, being with Stephanie, it's completely opened my eyes. She's not uptight or controlling. She's just cool. I mean, she smells different. She tastes different. She fucks different. Okay. She fucks like an animal. I gotta tell you, man. I went deep last night. Deep.
And this is how people talk about affairs, man. They go like, "Oh, she doesn't haggle me about this or nag me about that," and it's like, yeah, because you're not in the relationship. It's when you get in the relationship that the expectations come.
Well, this I think is an opportune moment to redefine for our audience who's heard this mentioned multiple times the A to Z theory.
Go, please.
Because this is exactly what the A to Z is. This is something we talked about at the very beginning of the podcast. It originated with someone who's been on the show, Steve Jones. And the theory is this, which is that you have in your brain all of the things you want in a partner. It is A to Z. I would like them to like movies. I would like them to like this kind of food, have this kind of sex, look like this, act like this kind of personality. And you are never going to get all those things. But when you meet a new person and you see, oh my God, they have T. Oh my God, they have X, they have J. Those things are amazing. And you don't really notice at the beginning of the relationship all the stuff they don't have. Then you get into the relationship, you start to be aware of all the things that they don't have. And you start to be aware of all the negative things that they do have. And you go, oh, this isn't so great. Then you meet a new person. And that person has L and C and A, all the things you're not getting from the old person. And they don't have the negative things that have been really bugging you. And you go, this is what I really need. But if you started a relationship with them, you'd start to find out all the things they don't have and all the negative things they do have. That is the A to Z theory.
The game is to try to find someone who has as many letters as possible and that the combination of those letters are perfect for you. And it's not easy to do, for sure.
Thought that I'd get a little understanding from you, but I guess I'm not going to get that.
Understanding about what, Jack?
I might be in love with another woman.
In love, really? 24 hours with some wine poor chick and you're fucking in love. Come on. And you're going to give up everything.
Here's what I'm thinking. You and me, we move up here, we buy a vineyard. You design the wine, I'll handle the business side. You get inspired, maybe you write another novel, one that can sell. As for me, if an audition comes up, LA's right there, man. It's 2 hours away. Not even.
You're crazy. You've gone crazy.
And he says, and Jack says, all I know is that I'm an actor. All I have is my instinct. You're asking me to go against it, for God's sakes. He's almost like Will Ferrell and Elf running his, I'm in love, and I don't care who knows it. That's pure. This is a lie, what Jack is telling Miles here. This idea of instinct and this idea of wanting to move up there and build a whole other life together just because he doesn't want to get married to Christine or he's scared about it. It's crazy.
I have friends, one in particular, who comes up with plans. And there's just like, you know what I think? And what's so funny about the plans is they always involve me and a bunch of other people. Like, we're all going to move to this place and we'll have an enclave and we'll all do our art together. We'll do this. It's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like, like that's not, but some people but they come up with plans. They don't do the plans, but they like to talk about their plans.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that song, Jesse, from Joshua Caddison. Jesse, tell me how it's all going to be. And then you never do it, or picture postcards from LA, talk about moving to LA, but never move to LA. But yeah, this is the thing you see. And I've seen actors say this in my life growing up. In my life in my 20s and 30s, and then becoming an actor, going and moving to LA. Actors love to think that they live life on their instinct, that their instincts are sharp and on top of it. And you got to follow your instinct. And your instincts can get you in trouble sometimes. And not only in your life, but also sometimes on sets and what have you. So you see these things and you see an actor like him or a person like him use it in this way. And it's such an abuse of that power that an actor has, because a lot of really great actors have a semblance of empathy to a degree or an instinct for empathy. And so they can understand a character really deeply and act on those impulses. But if you're not checking with the people you're doing scenes with or doing stuff with, it can blow up in your face. And clearly, him having sex with Stephanie without telling Christine and without telling maybe even his fears about the marriage with Christine, because I'm sure he's never shared that with her either, is the thing that's blowing up in his face right in this situation. And this fantasy that he wants to move off with Miles, like you said, dragging Miles into this fantasy with him is just madness, utter madness. So Stephanie walks up to the bar there now and joins them and says she probably showered and put herself together and says they should get going. He says, where you ask? Well, we're going to a bowling alley, Steve, so Jack can meet Stephanie's mom and her kid. And I write here, WTF. How the hell is he meeting the mom and the kid? And they just got together 24 hours ago. What the hell is happening here?
Well, and this is also where I go to, Miles thought he was going to do wine tasting and play golf with his buddy. And now I'm sitting in a fucking bowling alley, listening to this woman talk who's smoking cigarettes. I don't like being around the secondhand smoke. And just like the whole like thing of, and I'm sure you've had this moment where you thought you signed up for one thing and now you're going, how the fuck did I end up here?
In both ways. I have been the guy who is Miles going like, I went with my friend to go do this with this new girl that he's dated and I am so uncomfortable. And I've also been Jack, who's like, oh, I'm really into this girl. Now she's going to meet, I'm going to meet more of her folks or whatever. And you see the life that she is living. Because this mom was played by Stephanie Pharisee, is going off about Stephanie's dad, calling him a chicken shit about not investing in Home Depot or something. And I wrote, it's a great window that destroys all that Jack has been talking about in his romanticization of Stephanie. They're in a bowling alley. She's a single mom. Her mom is like smoking cigarettes over some terrible steak fries, probably talking about her situation. And it's madness. And then later we cut to Jack and Miles outside the bowling alley, and Jack is going off with Stephanie's family and says maybe he'll hook up with Miles later. They all say separate goodbyes to Miles, who is standing there like a sad sack. So this is such an interesting scene because I do think this is on purpose here. And I don't want to be judgmental, but you know, you look at what Maya's existence is versus Stephanie's, it's two different things. And so he's in love with Stephanie, but this is what comes with Stephanie's existence. You know, this kind of mother, the situation, she's a single mom. How is the situation with her dad, with the child's dad? We don't know. What's the situation going on here? And the fact that they're in a bowling alley, all of it screams something that Jack's trading in this awesome situation with Christine for this other situation, which could lead to some terrible stuff for him down the road. So it's a fascinating moment that destroys the romanticization that he was talking about with Stephanie.
Well, this is why I brought up the A to Z theory is that, okay, the sex with Stephanie is mind-blowing and amazing. She's really fun and great and all these awesome things. Yeah. That is all Jack can see at this moment.
Yes.
He can't actually see the kid and the ex-husband and the mom and the life and money and all the other things that come along with this. He cannot see. Miles can see all of it.
All of it. But we got to ask, though, this is also, Stephanie is being irresponsible here, too. How are you introducing your child to a guy you met 24 hours ago? How are you introducing your mom to a guy you met 24 hours ago? So I think it's a little bit of a judgment on Stephanie as well, that she's not necessarily the most put together person either, right?
Well,
both of them are kind of
agree.
in a bad place.
I certainly agree that this isn't the wisest choices, but Jack is fucking lying to her.
Right.
You know, we hear later on what Maya says, which I think all of which is true. He's told her he loves her. He's all into the kid. He's talking about moving up there. Like Stephanie is going, oh my God, I just met the most amazing guy.
Yeah.
Of course I want her to meet mom, you know, like, of course.
So 24 hours.
I'm, as you know, I don't move fast relationship wise. So no, I agree with you. But I blame Jack more than I blame Stephanie.
Yes, and that's fair. Absolutely. Yeah. And now we cut to Miles buying some items at the convenience store. This is a really uncomfortable scene to see in 2025. This man who's clearly in his late 30s, possibly early 40s, and he's buying these things at a convenience store. And one of the things he buys is a barely legal porn magazine. And then we see that he's closing the curtains so he can read.
No, hold on. Let's stop there.
You want to stop there? All right.
Yeah. I want to stop there because I think this
is. You want me to stop there?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to include you saying, "Do you want me to stop there?" Because it was funny.
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel there are important filmmaking, story, and character things that are happening here. First of all, the clerk at the store, that is the actual owner of this store at the location.
Cool.
So you know. So we've discussed before, like, okay, I have to have this character drive a car. In this case, they chose to drive a Saab, the perfect car for Miles in this circumstance.
100%.
You choose what kind of drink someone drinks, what kind of costumes they wear. These are the choices we make. So as you're moving into this scene and you're going, okay, he's going to buy a dirty magazine, you get to choose which dirty magazine he buys. He could buy Hustler. He could buy Jugs. He could buy one that's devoted to African-American women. We could have whatever fetish we want. They chose Barely Legal.
Yeah.
This is a junior high school teacher who has chosen Barely Legal as his magazine. And
that's a great point.
He says, when the clerk goes to get it, he says,
No, actually, sorry, the new one.
The new one.
If you say no, the new one, that is an amazing line because it means that he already has the old one.
Yes.
That is what this is. So I'm just like, yes, I agree with you. It is terribly uncomfortable. This is like a thing, but that is the choice they made for this character. And it is uncomfortable and horrible, but it also is an amazing choice. That is what I'm going to say.
If you look at it in 2025, you're essentially watching over his shoulder as he goes to a website in order to prepare to masturbate. And it's a barely legal website. And it's super uncomfortable that he's doing that. And you're right. So it makes you wonder, do they say who Brenda was? Was Brenda a student? Was Brenda
Jesus Christ.
I don't mean a young student. I mean, was she a TA at a college? Was it at a conference? I'm just wondering who Brenda was in the world of all this. So. All right, so he closes the curtains so he can, quote, read the articles over wine, he is legitimately reading the articles, Steve. We don't necessarily see him do anything else in this magazine. We dissolved him later, waking up with a Barely Legal magazine strewn across his chest. No tissues and no Vaseline product on the bed next to him, I noticed. So to me, this seems like he is so sad that he can't even get up the feeling to masturbate. Like, that's just how sad he is.
You know what? That's a valid interpretation.
That's what I think here. He fell asleep. He looks at his watch and contemplates for a moment and then shoots out of bed, Steve, gets showered, heads out to dinner at the hitching post. He is now taking control of his life to it.
Yes.
Yeah, he walks back and forth before going in, knowing Maya might be in there, so he's preparing himself for this situation. And he heads to see Gary at the bar. And he orders a bottle of Highliner, which is what Maya ordered when they all hung out the first night they were there. So in a way, he's kind of indirectly calling her, so to speak.
Say, is Maya working?
Maya? No, I haven't seen her. I think she's off tonight.
And then we cut to Miles, and this is great. We cut to Miles stumbling out of the bar into frame with Gary trailing behind him slightly out of focus, asking if he's okay. And then Miles drunkenly stumbles off, making noises and grunts. I've been there, Steve. When you stumble out of a bar, super drunk, making all kinds of weird noises and guttural sounds as you stumble off into the night. So what happened here? She wasn't here and he just drank to excess. What happened?
That is exactly what happened. And it's the emptiness that makes it so sad to me because he's alone. It's like, look, I've drunk alone, but if I were to drink alone, it would be my house. Like to be the only person sitting at a bar, getting slowly, methodically drunk in front of a guy who knows you, which is Gary. Is really sad. And the fact that he's heading out and Gary knows how drunk he is. Gary knows everything. I'm just going to say. Right. Gary has observed everything that is happening. He totally understands what's happening. And he's making the decision whether this guy, Miles, who I think Gary likes, it needs help. You know, I mean, it's a really sad scene.
I don't think Gary follows out everybody who stumbles out drunk. And I think he really likes Miles. Maybe he's been where Miles has been. And so he feels a kinship with that. And he's really wants to make sure he's okay. But I love the performance here. Listen, playing drunk can be so stereotypical and cliche. The way Miles plays drunk, the way Paul Giamatti plays Miles drunk is heartbreaking. Super heartbreaking. You know, you can tell this is a guy who's lost. He's just literally wandering through his life because he has no port in the storm and he's just doing these things. And he thought, okay, I'm gonna go see Maya. I'm gonna look my best and I'm gonna go get her, and she's not there. And so instead of being like, well, she's not there, I'm going to do something else to enjoy my night, he gets a blind drunk and stumbles out back to the hotel. We cut to a graphic that reads Wednesday. We're only at Wednesday, Steve. We see a golf ball being put on a tee, and we pull back to see that it's Jack with Miles.
Did you ever get a hold of Maya yesterday?
Nope.
No. She really likes you, man. Stephanie will tell you.
Could you just give me a little room?
Yeah.
Jack, please. Thanks.
Jack talks to him about Maya and striking while the iron is hot, and then gives him advice about how his swing can be better, which Miles is clearly irritated by. And then we cut to them walking down the course, and he asks Miles about his novel.
You been checking your messages?
Obsessively?
Huh.
Guess I'll just have to learn to kiss off another 3 years of my life.
But you haven't heard anything yet. Don't you think your negativity's a little premature?
So, Steve, I'm sure you've had this conversation in some form.
The line that I felt so deep is, I guess I'm just going to have to tick off another 3 years of my life. That because that's the thing that people don't understand who aren't writers is like, okay, like I just did I wrote this article about constitutional originalism. I worked ridiculously far too hard on it. I read probably 12 books. I did lots of research. I spent months writing it and rewriting it. And I put it out there, and I'm very proud of it. And a few people read it, and a few people liked it, and nothing. That's done. So, okay, those months, whatever the time I put in to that's gone now. I can tick off another few months of my life that went into that thing. Am I proud of the writing? Yeah, I'm proud of the writing. But it didn't do what I was trying to get it published. I sent it to all these different. I couldn't get anyone to read it. Like I couldn't get even people that I knew.
Yeah.
That I couldn't get people to read it. Nobody read it. Eventually, we were coming up on the election. I'm like, I'm just going to essentially self-publish it, which I did. And that's that. Like it hurts, man.
I'm sorry, man. Where did you self-publish it at? Maybe people want to read it here from the Cine-Files.
I'll put a link to, I'll send you, it'll be a link in the show notes and everybody can see it.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a short where people maybe do a live show where people chime in on it. It'd be a lot of fun. We'll see.
Sure. Well, I mean, I know this is topics that you're interested in. I'm happy to discuss. Listen, dude, I have about 3 times as much to say about constitutional originalism than what I put in the article. So if you want to do a short or a show to just discuss that, I am ready.
Yes, I like this idea. And as we see him trying to be positive about him and whatever, never mind that Jack's been kind of a jerk to him at this point. Jack gets another one of his childishly brilliant ideas trying to make Miles feel better because he tells him to publish it himself and that he'll chip in.
Just get it out there. Get it reviewed. Get it in libraries. Let the public decide.
And without missing a beat, he starts to counsel him on his swing again. And after one comment too many, Miles just explodes at him.
It's all about stillness. Inner quiet.
Shut up, shut up, shut up! Jesus Christ, man, what the hell is wrong with you? Please, just shut up! Fuck!
Jack says, what's with the hostility, man? I know you're a little frustrated with your life right now, but you can choose to be less hostile. I can't tell you how many times I want to choke people who tell me you can choose to be less hostile. You can choose to have a better... You don't know me. You don't know my emotions. You don't know how I'm built. And I would love to choose to be less aggressive or less emotional or less passionate, as you can see me being here or listening to me being here. But this is how I'm built. Now, are there certain moments where I'm level-headed and I go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to choose to react. I'm not going to choose to be upset. Absolutely. But there are other moments where there's no choice. The choice has been made for me, and I'm in this place. So it's... Well, I understand Miles's anger, to be honest with you, at Jack.
Well, and you are leaving out, you're going like, oh, the only issue here is Miles being hostile? That's the only issue? Like, you went on this trip with this dude who's abandoned you to fuck this woman who now you're like trapped in a lie with Christine because you're the best man at the goddamn wedding. So you're going to have to do that while this guy is saying like self-publish your book. It's like, which sounds really nice and like a good suggestion and supportive, but it's fucking not. And you won't shut up while I'm trying to take a goddamn golf shot. So you're saying the problem is me being hostile. Maybe the problem is you being an asshole. Sorry. Maybe I got a little carried away with myself there, John.
I think you're 100% right. And yeah, because Jack is always coming from this place of like, I know better. Or, why can't you just chill out? Like roll with the flow. And the thing is, it goes with a flow that fits for Jack. And when it doesn't fit for Jack, he's calling you a dumb fuck or he's undercutting your manhood in some way or undercutting who you are as a person. And when you push back on him, he's all of a sudden being nice to you. He's almost a little bit of an addictive personality. You could argue that he's a sex addict. I know a lot of people kind of scoff at that, but I would argue that there's elements of that in his behavior and in Thomas Haden Church's performance, which, by the way, we haven't given enough love to Thomas Haden Church, who is
He's so
exceptional
good
as Jack.
Yeah. I don't know if Jack is a sex addict in general, but on this week he is.
Oh, yeah.
That he is 100% obsessed with this, with Stephanie and having sex. So here he
went deep. They went
deep.
Well, just when it looks like they might be having a friendship-ending fight, a random golf ball flies into their area. And this causes them to look to see, quote, what fucker hit into them. And we see them look at an older foursome on the hill with one of the dudes yelling down, going, hurry up, will ya? And that dude yelling down is Rex Pickett, the writer of the novel and the movie that this movie is based on. And this, for those of you who don't know, is a violation of golf etiquette 101. You do not hit into a couple of people who are ahead of you simply because you're frustrated about how slow they're playing. That is not what you do. And certainly you don't do it without yelling 4 first so they don't get hit by the golf ball. But this seems to bring Jack and Miles back together again, Steve, because they are on the same team now. And now we've gone back in a way to Jack and Miles at college. This is Jack and Miles coming together. They call these old dudes assholes, and Miles starts launching golf balls back at them with an oops, look out precision that he didn't have earlier. And when the two dudes get into their golf cart and start driving down to threaten them, Jack pulls out a driver and says, this is going to be fun, and goes after them like a crazy person, prompting the old men to turn around and drive back scared as hell. So talk to me about this scene, because this seems to bring them back together, because now they're focused on a common enemy in this situation.
I think if the golfers didn't hit into them, I think this whole week might have been over. Like, I think things were that bad. And I think this is what brings them together. And I also love, as much as I find Jack to be a very irritating person, the guy who just decides to act completely insane, swinging his arms and yelling to scare the crap out of them. That was kind of the right choice at that moment. Yeah. That was sort of a brilliant move.
Yeah. Well, as you said from the beginning of this film, these guys are fucked up on so many levels, and pathetic or sad or have a lot of issues. But there are moments where you're like, okay, I could see why people could like this guy or like this person, And this moment here where Jack, and they're both on the same side, which I think is great to see them both on the same side, which is a really nice thing to have in this moment, is actually kind of unsettling, because you've got intelligence and you've got brawn coming at you at the same time. And you can tell that when Miles is dialed into his anger, Miles is quite a formidable opponent and is quite willing to do shit that Jack would actually do himself. So now you see like why they have a little bit of a connection. And surely Jack, in a way, is defending Miles by running out there with his golf club. Yeah. So there is a genuine affection for each other there that comes out in that moment.
Just don't give up on Maya. Cool, smart chicks like that require persistence.
I don't want to talk about it, please.
All I know is that she's beautiful, a lot of soul. She's perfect for you. I'm just not going to feel good about this week until I know you guys have hooked up.
No.
And as they walk by a man and his grandson at a table, Jack says,
I mean, don't you want to feel that cozy little box gripped down in your Johnson?
Hey, mind keeping it down, buddy?
And this is actor Phil Reeves, who is playing a vacationer, Dr. Walt Hendricks. And you've seen Phil Reeves in Veep and other things, right, Steve?
Yeah, he's in Election. He's in About Schmidt, Castle, but it's Veep that I really know him. I had never watched Veep. I watched it over the last year. Oh my God, that's a brutally funny show, and he is so good in it whenever he shows up.
Yeah, I love Phil Reeves. I don't know why he did a one-moment bit here. He might be. I couldn't find anything in my research about him being on the set to do this one-moment bit, because he is not in the rest of the film, and he is given a full name, Vacationing Dr. Walt Hendricks, in the cast. So either there's more scenes with him, or this was just a favor for Alexander Payne, and he wanted to be a part of it.
I mean, it's like if you had acted for Alexander Payne and he said, hey, I got this totally small part. It's one line.
Funny little moment.
Do you want to come up to Santa Barbara and spend the night and hang out for the weekend and come do this one line and you'll get paid? You would say, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
I guess you're right. If
a woman finds out how I live, that I'm not a published author, that I'm a liar, essentially, any interest she has is going to evaporate real quick. If you don't have money at my age, you're not even in the game anymore. You're just a pasture animal waiting for the abattoir.
Abattoir. What is that?
Slaughterhouse.
And then Jack, because Jack is a little bit of a dummy, repeats abattoir to himself over and over again as if he's found a cool new word like a 10-year-old.
And he totally rolled out abattoir. I wish it was in the movie, like how he rolls it out on someone later on.
What do you think about what he's saying here, Steve, about himself? You don't have money, you're not even in the game anymore. This is something that guys have felt. I've certainly felt this way in my 30s and early 40s, that like, how attractive am I to a woman? Because women, and there's nothing wrong with this, women seek security for the most part. And certainly as you get older and you're not married, that was a big thing with me getting older. A lot of women would ask me on first dates, why aren't you married? Why didn't you get married? Did you come close to getting married? It's like a big deal. And then like, how much money do you make? I had that question a number of times on dates, first dates, especially in LA, which is a super terrible way to experience a first date, having someone ask you how much money you have in your bank account. This happens. It's not bullshit. This really legitimately happens in certain places, and certain men are asked about that because their money is how they're valued by some women on the dating side of things. And so that is something that when Miles, is saying all of this stuff, I have felt exactly how Miles has felt numerous times in my 30s and in my early 40s.
So I am about to say a thing that I am not saying that I live by, but I believe this advice, and probably should take my own advice, which is that I always think that preemptive rejection is a mistake. Don't reject yourself before the other person has a chance to reject you.
Oh, fair point.
For anything. So I had a friend who was like, he was a playwright, and he was deciding whether or not to submit his play to this important competition. And he said, well, maybe it's not good enough. And I'm like, let them make that decision. Yeah. They can make the decision that it's not good enough. They are going to, you have seen, and we'll just, like whether it's for plays or screenwriting or any endeavor, we have all seen people that are terrible hired for a fucking job.
Oh, totally.
Because people who do the hiring don't know anything. And we've all seen beautiful males and females going out with people where you're like, why are you with this person? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? So the thing is like, the reasons that people are going to be interested in you and the reasons that they might reject you are things that you actually can't predict. Yeah. And so give them the benefit of the opportunity of rejecting you. Don't pre-reject yourself for reasons of why you think something is wrong with you. They might love that stuff. They might think that you're a difficult, thin-skinned Pinot grape, and that's exactly what they're looking for. So it might very well be that someone rejects you for not having enough money, but give them the opportunity to do it, because they might not.
Yeah, yeah. The other side of it is, just because people reject who you are as a person, don't think you're a terrible person, right? And
that doesn't mean you're that.
Yeah, it's different if you're slapping people around, or if you're doing terrible things, it's a whole other ballgame. But if someone, that's the thing that I destroyed myself about for years, and I can say that to people, I hope someone's listening, is that just because you go and date certain people, or you go out and they have issues with who you are as a person, you've got to find the strength to go, you know what, this isn't the right thing for me. You're not the right person for me, and I'm okay with that, and I'm walking away from this. You've got to be strong. I know for years I felt terrible about who I was as a person. It wasn't until I did that therapy before I met my life partner now that I came to terms with this thing of letting it all go and just be like, look, you know what, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. And yes, I'm a messed up person. I've got some flaws, but I've also got some really positive things. And so I've got stuff to offer. And if you come from a place of really embracing who the hell you are, you'd be surprised at the people you attract. Because sometimes you attract, when you're in a negative place about yourself, you attract people who are going to reinforce that. Sometimes you find that savior that understands and like Maya and sees you and wants to cultivate your grape, but a lot of the times you don't. And so you've got to be aware of that. So fixing yourself or working on yourself, and I don't mean fixing like changing things about yourself. I mean like coming to the place of accepting yourself is a massive part, and loving yourself is a massive part of finding someone to be in a healthy relationship with, because you'd be surprised at who you attract once you handle that.
Well, and I don't believe in a magical being, probably the less romantic of the two of us.
Yes.
When people say like, there's someone out there for everybody, everybody has their perfect thing that, I don't believe that that's true necessarily. I don't think I don't believe in perfect love or true love. And this is what the A to Z theory really is about, which is that you're never, ever going to find the perfect A to Z. And you will never be the perfect A to Z for anybody else. You are flawed and you have things you're missing and things that are great about you. And the point is to find a fit. The point isn't to find perfection. And so the fact that you're not perfect does not mean you're not lovable.
Yeah.
Because nobody is perfect.
Right. Exactly. And we cut to them picking up Stephanie and Maya and driving off to spend a day together. And this is a really beautiful sequence in the movie.
Hey, Miles. I heard you stopped by the restaurant to see me last night.
Oh, yeah. No. I stopped by for a drink. Didn't see you.
I had class.
Oh, well, nice to see you now.
It's good to see you, too.
And then we get into a montage with much more uplifting and hopeful music playing underneath as they drive through vineyards, listen to an author talking about his experiences with Pinot grapes, and they sneak out through a back door to walk through these barrels of wine. And as we dissolve to Stephanie and Jack making out on a staircase there, we pan to Miles and Maya talking, and we see them all walking out to a picnic as the sun goes down. And this is such a beautiful sequence, Steve. Like right in the middle of all this drama and madness, the four of them meet up, and there's this like almost idyllic possibility of what they could be if they were all single and if this was a real situation that was rolling out before them in their lives at the time.
I think in the center of it to me is Virginia Madsen. I think her performance, 100%. Because Miles is such a fucked up person that you need someone as amazing as Maya to make this all work. And she totally does. And it's just what the movie does multiple times of kind of lull you into a false sense of security for a while, because you're just like, yeah, this is nice. Miles is happy. This feels so good. And deep down, it's can't go well because there's a lie in the field. And because there's a lie in the field, eventually that lie is going to come out. And it is the better things are now, the worse it's going to be when that lie finally comes out.
The lie is the mine in the field that you didn't know, that only two people know is in there. Right. Yep. Exactly. Yep. We cut to them in Stephanie's place laughing and chatting, which wakes up Sienna, her daughter. So I think that's a little bit of a window of Stephanie as a mom, but Stephanie apologizes to her, and Uncle Jack, now he's Uncle Jack now, puts her back to bed with Stephanie promising that they'll be quieter, and then resumes talking at the same level of volume.
And this is where I wrote down, Jack is such an asshole.
Yeah.
Like taking the kid to bed. So you're not just lying to Stephanie. Yeah. You're lying to a family. You're lying to a little girl. You're acting the role of being a loving guy. And I'm not going to say Jack doesn't feel like this little daughter. Yeah. He's an actor. He is imagining what his world would be if this was his world. And he's playing the role. Yeah.
Why are you trying to stop his instinct, man? This is his instinct.
This is instinct. Because his instinct is being a fucking asshole. This is horrible what he's doing.
I agree. Then we cut to them leaving in their respective cars with Maya driving Miles back. And this is one of those film moments that is just so beautiful to see as Miles looks at her with that smile that only a burgeoning new love can give you. And we dissolve to them walking up the stairs to Maya's place. And as she turns the key in the lock, he reflexively reaches up to Rubber's shoulders, which prompts her to stop and turn, and they kiss. And this is the right moment.
Yep.
For the kiss. And they move into her place as the camera pans to the houses outside, and it would seem time passed to the next morning. And I wrote, the music through this entire sequence is amazing. And we see Maya open the door in her flannel robe and coffee, and she looks happy, dare I say, content.
She's such a solid person. Mm-hmm. She just knows who she is. That's what I feel from her.
Yeah.
And she knows the other time wasn't the right time. And as you said, this was the right time. And she feels good about the choices that she made.
Yeah. Speaking of the choices that she made, she walks back to the bedroom to see one of the choices that she made, sleeping in the bed there, Miles. And then we cut to a montage of them spending the day together at an event, at a farmer's market, chatting and walking with his hand on her back. And they end up under a tree. And they look like this comfortable couple that's been together for a long time. She is reading the rest of the paper while he does the crossword page. Maya says they should come by the restaurant for lunch, which he agrees to. And then she asks him about this Bordeaux tasting dinner in Santa Barbara on Saturday night.
It's kind of pricey, but if you wanted to go, I'd be into it. Why don't you just stay for the weekend?
And then Miles responds with a response that changes everything in this movie.
No, we have to get back Friday for the rehearsal dinner.
What rehearsal dinner? Who's getting married?
and boom, everything is over. Steve, what was your reaction to this moment in the theater? And did you know this was the end of their momentary bliss? What did you think?
As I just said, there is a lie in the field. In this kind of a movie, we know the lie is going to come out. That's how this movie works. So we know it's coming.
Yeah.
But the way it happens and the fact that it's Miles and Paul Giamatti's reaction,
yes,
the moment that he says rehearsal dinner, and you see him know what he just did.
Yeah.
Because he's been living with this guilt over this thing. So
Yes.
it is terrible and it is upsetting. But I also think if this moment doesn't happen, he does not end up with Maya at the end of the film, if that's what happens.
Point. Good
because if he left the lie there and Maya just eventually, there's no way for her to continue to date the best friend of Jack, who is now married to Christine after they lied to them the whole week. That can't happen. This has to come out.
Yeah.
And so in a weird way, it's good, but it is horrible at the moment.
Right, because he didn't, he awkwardly revealed it. And it was because his guard was down so much with her that he wanted to share whatever, he was thinking with her, that he said it without stopping himself. And you're right. In retrospect, it's kind of a good thing, but still, it was pretty terrible that he was holding on to the lie and hadn't told her.
Mm-hmm.
And because he hadn't told her, we cut to them in the middle of an argument, and she is yelling at him.
Were you ever gonna say anything?
Yes, of course I was. Just now I could have told you some story, but I didn't. I told you the truth. Maya.
Don't touch me. Just take me home.
I think it's a brilliant filmmaking choice that we don't actually show the moment that he explains what's going on.
Yes.
That we cut away and then cut back in. That is very much the choice I would have made too, because we don't need to see it. And I think what's really important here is that if he doubled down on the lie in this moment, it's like, Jack and I have our buddy John, who he's having his rehearsal dinner, and we're both. If he lied, then he is fully betraying her, and he can never have a relationship with Maya.
That's
so what had to happen was he did tell the truth, but we didn't have to witness it, which I think is great filmmaking.
Yeah, I agree. We already know what's going to happen, so being in the middle of the argument is just it saves time in the movie. I agree with you 100%.
Do you have any idea what he's been saying to her?
Well, he's an actor, so it can't be good.
Only that he loves her. How she's the only woman that's ever rocked his world. How he adores Sienna. How he wants to move here and get a place with the two of them and commute when he has to.
And as Steve said, these are fucking asshole moves without having told her about Christine.
Please believe me. I was on the verge of telling you last night, but
But you wanted to fuck me first.
That's almost as devastating as "Don't call me when you're drunk," Miles. It's a fucking bullet, man. And Miles responds with a hurt.
Oh, Maya. No.
Yeah.
And I'll say about that, they're both right. So she is 100% right that he didn't tell her because he wanted to fuck her first. And him saying no because it's more than that is also true. It's like, because it's not just, he didn't just want to fuck her.
He didn't see her as just a lay, right? There's more.
He's in love with, when he said she's a fucking waitress in Buellton, he wasn't saying she's beneath me. He's saying, how could I have a relationship with her when she lives up here and I live in San Diego and all that stuff? He has deep feelings for Maya and has for a while. But that line, man, you wanted to fuck me first. That is, we've seen how sensitive and understanding and kind Maya can be, and now we see her steal.
Yeah,
100%,
and the respect she wants to have, and she's going to tell us more about this as well, because they pull up to her place, they have this exchange before she gets out of the car.
I've just spent the last 3 years of my life trying to extricate myself from a relationship that was full of deception, and I'm doing just fine.
And I haven't been with anybody since my divorce. So this has been a big deal for me, Maya. Hanging out with you and last night. I really like you, Maya. And I am not Jack. I'm his freshman year roommate from San Diego State.
She blinks a couple of times, looks at him, says nothing, gets out of the car, and hurries up to her place. So what do you think about this final exchange between them in this particular part of the movie?
I love the honesty in her sentence. She just lays it on the and I love his honesty. And I find the line about I'm his freshman year roommate from San Diego State fascinating because it's this weird minimization of he's kind of separating himself and saying I think there are times where Miles is going, and Jack too, I'm sure. Why am I friends with this guy? Am I really friends with this guy? Like, what is the relationship here? Because they're so opposites, you know?
Yeah. But it's just like Good Will Hunting, right? I remember when you didn't know which side of the bed to piss on, and you're a pimply faced kid. For it's an unusual thing. People connect in college. Roommates probably didn't even know each other till they moved in together. You put together sometimes in college, at least back then. I don't know how it is now. And you develop a friendship. And because there's years of developing a friendship. And I bet Jack was not necessarily the coolest kid at college at the time. He became, as he grew into his looks, this thing as an actor. And Miles was this, writer who was trying to find his stones and figure out who he was. Or maybe Jack was this way. And so there's the kind of connection here where both of them kind of fill in the holes that the other one has. And so they have found this friendship. But him saying, as you said, that I was just his freshman roommate at San Diego State, there's a sense of almost like I was put together with this guy and I have no way out. All right. And as Maya's going into her place, Miles is sitting in the car, and Jack and Stephanie are in this state of bliss without being aware of Christine, with Stephanie not being aware of Christine. It seems like this is the perfect time to end part 2 of Sideways. And Steve, I can't believe we're going into a part 3 for this film, but this also kind of tells you how great this movie is, that it's taking us 3 parts to dissect this thing, because there's so much here to enjoy and explore.
Well, I think too, it's personal. I mean, like we have both, as we've been going through, related a lot to both of these characters in different ways. And so, and this to me is the thing, maybe this is one of the most essential things about the Cine-Files in the way that it's developed over the years, is that there's the movie, but then there's our experience of the movie and what the movie makes us think about and how it relates to our lives and how we talk about it and how it makes us feel. It isn't just an analysis of, look at this great filmmaking, isn't that a great performance? It's also about us, And so for me, I'll just speaking for myself, I've found so much in here that I related to in some ways that I'm not that thrilled about a little bit, but like just feels really true and human. And so I don't necessarily want to rush the discussion,
Yeah. I hope you all who are listening to us are okay with us moving into a third part with this film, because I'm enjoying this discussion, and I couldn't have been more wrong, yet relieved to be wrong about this movie being a simple comedy or a fun comedy we could just blaze through over a part or 2. And there's so much I'm discovering here that I had no idea was here, almost like the people in the movie, discovering how much more depths and layers and levels they have as human beings throughout this film. And so this has been a fun breakdown with you, Steve, and I'm looking forward to part 3. And thanks to everybody who's been listening to us through these 2 parts.
Yes, thank you. And we'd love to hear all of your thoughts. If you want to visit us on our Facebook page, you can just do a search for the Cine-Files. You can find us on Twitter at Cine_Files, Cine-Files Podcast on Instagram. And if you would like to subscribe to the Outlaw Winery, I think you should maybe send at the Rocha Says a note saying you're interested in his thoughts on wine. We can get that all set up. If you want to subscribe to the show, you could do it at Apple Podcasts and YouTube, on Spotify. Leave your comments on YouTube and Spotify, your reviews on Apple Podcasts. They really do help. So if you do love the show and have been listening for a while, that 5-star review would be very much appreciated. You can buy or stream Sideways along with every other movie we've ever reviewed on cinephiles.net. And if you want to reach me, you can do it at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram. And it's also SR Morris on Blue Sky, although I haven't really started doing Blue Sky yet because, as we know, I am a social media expert. So, John, how would people find you?
You can always find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And my YouTube channel, as Steve was saying, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. And give me your suggestions for wine, and I'll read them and record them for you as a fun little adventure. So, but thank you so much to everybody who's left such wonderful compliments about the first part of Sideways. I hope you enjoyed the second part. And Steve, this has been great.
Yeah, and I think it's been fantastic. And so that is it for this week. And we will be back to conclude our exploration of Alexander Payne's Sideways next week on the Cine-Files.